that food at a certain level requires a lot of discipline and it requires a lot of time and effort and love. And if you don't have them factors, it's just going to be food.
Welcome to the Private Chef podcast, serving the 1%. I'm your host, Hennche, and on our show we speak to the best chefs, how they honed in on their skills to excel in the industry, and what it takes to work as a private chef for some of the most exclusive clients in the world. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Private Chef podcast. Today we're in for a treat as we delve into the culinary journey of Chef Filip Turczyn, the visionary behind Flip Flop Foods, and he will explain us later how he called his company like this. Chef Filip has blossomed into a skilled private and traveling chef, specializing in the vibrant flavors of Slavic cuisine from Eastern Europe. Chef Filip's culinary journey takes us through his deep-seated passion for his heritage, where he finds joy in creating dishes with the freshest ingredients and explores techniques such as foraging, fermenting, and pickling. His commitments to continuous learning and his desire to elevate Slavic cuisine through refinement and education truly sets him apart in the industry. Welcome to the show, Filip.
Hi, Hannes. How are you doing? Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Hello.
Hello. Well, where are you located right
now? So at the moment, I'm located in the French Alps in a little town called Morzine. So it's on the French and the Swiss border. So it's actually my last 2 weeks in here, and probably by the time you post, I'm not sure when you're going to post it, but probably by the time you kind of edit it and post, I'm already going to be south of France. So private chefing is, very much all about traveling. But yeah, at the moment, beautiful French Alps, can't complain.
Nice. How does it work out with family life?
Well, family life works pretty well for me. Depends how you define family. Like a lot of my family, like my parents, they live in the UK, and my brother has actually started his journey with private chefing, so he's actually in the same town right now. So yeah, he's starting, and my fiance, she works fully remote doing recruitment, so she very much travels with me wherever I go, which is quite nice. And most of my clients are, very much okay that if I come over with my significant other, they're more than happy, for her to come over, because, usually a gig like this comes with, a little package of, accommodation and stuff like this. So they're more than happy for her to be a part of it, which she really is, because she helps me a lot with, anything from accounting to a little bit of marketing to, all the kind of sorts of stuff that you don't really see on the plate. Yeah. She does a lot of it because I'm quite bad at it. So thank you very much.
But it's interesting how the industry has shifted around that. And I think as chefs, we have a little bit more leverage now to bring a significant other along, because they know they will not get the best chefs if they close all of those doors, if they're being too restrictive. I see more and more families being accommodative. Not just maybe on the salary end, but on like, hey, yeah, if your significant other works remotely, you can bring her. I mean, obviously that doesn't work on a yacht, but it works in very different other scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, I think what has changed, it was, the pandemic. Corona changed a massive thing in the industry, but not only the private sector, but I really much think, that's when I kind of started. I've started just before Corona, a couple of months before Corona. That's when I kind of got my first private chef gig. But yeah, it verified a lot. A lot of chefs. I'm not really sure about the States because I'm very much based in Europe. But, in Europe, it pretty much changed the whole industry. A lot of chefs decided just to quit the chefing industry and be something else, do something different because of, the hours, the pretty much being underpaid and overworked. So that was very much a thing. And as you say, people did kind of stop having many strict regulation about this. But also, this is the beauty of being a private chef and, traveling, that not only that, your clients or your guests pick you to serve them and, essentially to employ you, but you can also pick your clients, which is a beautiful thing, that you don't have the comfort of doing that when you're working in a restaurant and a hotel or something like this. Because if you think your client is great, they'll let you travel with your fiance, they'll give you a good accommodation, they'll give you a good package, a good wage, and they're super nice people. you're going to pick them again if they offer you a job, and this is fine. But sometimes, you'll work for a person that's maybe not necessarily as nice or as kind, and you have the luxury of saying, you know what, thank you very much. It was great to work for you. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor. But no, and that's the beauty of it. And yeah, that's the private chef life, I suppose.
Yeah, but in the future, every time you put in a request, I'll be busy.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, you just don't you don't say no. You just say, yeah, I'm super busy, or you just say no. Really depends how confident you feel.
I think this is actually very interesting. There's this art of saying no, and 99% of the time you want to say no without saying no. It's like you don't really want to burn bridges because it's also a small world. Like, for example, private chefs in the Hamptons. Yes, there's like 1,000 families who can hire you, but then again, also a lot of them know each other, and you only have one name in the industry. So there's like this fine line of conduct where you need to make sure you stand up and establish boundaries, but you also say no without saying no.
Yeah, well, the boundaries are very important, and I'm glad you brought this up, because yes, we are in the service industry, and yes, we are there to serve people, but we're not servants. And this is very much what I try to, make it super, super nice and clear when I do work for people, that, obviously I'll be doing anything above and beyond to, to make them happy with the food, with the service, with the chat, because you're very much an entertainer and a chef. It's part of a job. You do entertain people with a conversation, with a story from, how you began cooking or how you got here because of X, Y, and Z. But at least I do. I very much, state the fact that we are not servants. And, when it comes to myself, or when it comes to all the other staff in, maybe fully staffed houses, they're not servants. They're still human beings. They still want a good work-life balance. They still want want to be treated like human, and that's just simple as that. Just be nice to people, and everything comes down to that.
Do you feel like that part of the equation changes the longer you work with somebody?
Yes and no. Maybe you do become more relaxed with them, and probably more friendly, and how much you can probably say to them, and the other way around. But at the end of the day, it is business, and there's a certain service that you're selling. For me, it's private chefing, and that's where it kind of all ends. That there is a line of, okay, we can be super friendly and nice, and and many times I had my clients asking me if I want to go out for dinner with them, or maybe go out for a little drink or whatever. But you very much need to specify that there's a line of, I am employed by you at some point.
Yeah, I find that this is again a really fine line. Like, I've been there where they're like, hey, let's do this, or even sit at the beach together, and they're so like, okay, it's a very fine line, and this is good while it's good, but I also know this is kind of ammunition when something is not good. It's like, or a different instances. One time, one of the principals actually screamed at me for something that I thought was completely unreasonable. And I'm like, hey, we're in a professional work relationship. Like, you cannot speak to me that way. If you ever raise your voice to me in that way again, we're done. And her reasoning was, yeah, but we're in my home. And I'm like, that's okay. You can speak to this or in this tonality with your children and maybe other people in your family. Yeah. But I'm employed by you. Like, this is a professional work relationship. You don't get to scream at me.
Well, yeah, that's it, and that's probably just like you said it. You need to set boundaries of being super friendly, and I'm more than happy to speak with anyone about anything, and if you would get to know me a bit longer, you'd realize that I'm a very, very chatty person, and it's really hard to shut me up sometimes. But at the same time, yeah. It's all about, I think one of many reasons why private chefs became private chefs is, as we spoke before, is to stop getting shouted at. And that's something that I very much did not enjoy in my training years. There's a bit of nostalgia to it, which the discipline I quite miss. I'm not going to lie. I do miss the discipline of a professional high-end kitchen. But yes, one of many reasons why I left the industry, and that was probably the kind of kickstart to my private chef career. It was because I fell out with one of the sous chefs, and and I was just sick of being shouted at and being treated the wrong way. So whenever this happens, nicely but firmly, you say, "Here, end of, like, please do not do this," or and it usually works. If not, as I said, you have the luxury of picking and choosing, which is a nice thing, I suppose. So yeah, it's very much an organic kind of thing of, if it happens, it happens. Move on. Yeah, that's it.
So now coming up to your 5th year in the private chef world, comparing it to the restaurant world, would you ever go back to the line?
I've tried. I'm not going to lie. I've tried about 2 years ago. I very much failed. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure why. I'd like to know why, but it was quite a fun experience because I was living in Warsaw for probably about 2 years, and then my fiance and I decided to move to Gothenburg for a while and work in well, I was going to work in a hotel in Sweden, in Gothenburg. And with me being fully hotel trained, I was trained at the Glen Eagles Hotel in Scotland, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. And being trained in a hotel is a completely different thing as opposed to being trained in a restaurant. So I thought it's going to be great, but I really did not enjoy it. There's a corporate system of working with 50 managers, doing meetings to talk about having a meeting, and the budgeting, and staff management. It's all coming up to killing your creativity and killing the essence of chefing. And I became a chef to cook. I did not become a chef to sit in front of my computer and do Excel sheets, which is sadly a huge part of a job, even being a private chef, but not as much as working in a hotel. So yeah, there's a lot of differences. Some of them I miss, some of them I don't, I suppose. I really miss the people that you usually work with, because I remember the first ever team of chefs that I worked with from day one of getting a set of my chef whites, and the kitchen was just full of characters, and they were the funniest. It was great. They were pretty much a family because you've spent every Christmas, every Easter, every Valentine's together. And you got to know them inside out, and it was some of the best times. But at the same time, I do enjoy working, by myself. Getting a podcast in my little, earphones, and just crack on chopping onions and being responsible for what you do yourself. Because if there's anything that goes wrong in my kitchen, the only person that's responsible is it's the man in the mirror. It's just me. Very rarely you do get a luxury of having a lot more cooking staff, and yeah, it gives you a lot of independence, and it teaches you life lessons on a daily basis, I suppose.
This is also one of the reasons I think some people are not cut out for it, because you have to acknowledge the responsibility, and especially in the kind of level of money and wealth we operate in, money is usually not a constraint, which means the equipment is usually not a constraint, which means ingredients are usually not a constraint. So it's really the man in the mirror, as you said, and that's the hard one to swallow for some people, that at the end of the day, it's on you. Like, the resources are there. Most of the time, the equipment and stuff is there. And if you can't make it work, it's really on you.
Yeah, well, that's it. You're anyone from doing your own shopping to designing the menu to do all your costings to cooking it and prepping it and then plating it and very much serving it and then washing up after yourself. That's a thing that you very rarely do working in a restaurant. You usually have a kitchen porter or a dishwasher that would do the job, but there's nobody there. You're all by yourself. So yeah, it is very much a life lesson, and it is something that you do need to kind of agree with yourself that, okay, this is what has been added to my responsibilities, but this is something that I don't have to be putting up with anymore, and that's the the shouting and the stress and all this kind of stuff that you get in a professional kitchens. So I guess it's like any other profession. It's you got the good things and the bad things, and it's just agreeing to crack on with it.
Mm-hmm. What you said about having the AirPods or something in the ear, listening to podcasts, was part of my assumption when I was like, okay, I'm listening to so many podcasts while I'm cooking. Maybe it would be cool to have a private chef podcast so chefs can listen to it.
Well, yeah, as I told you before when we had a little chat, that I did actually hear about your podcast way before you've messaged me, and and kindly inviting me to be one of the guests on it. It's very inspiring. Listen to all these people, and the beauty of the industry is that every single one of us, doesn't matter if it's starting chef and at the start of your career, or if it's as if it's a cooking legend, like I said, I know all the Marco Pierre White podcasts by heart now. They're all have the ability of telling a story the way that they'll interest you, and they'll somehow have a little bit of influence on your cooking, on your the way that you see the industry. And it's up to you what you do with it. If you just listen to it and that's it, or if you listen to it and you have the time to think about it. And when you're cooking, 9 out of 10 cooking is our passion. It's our love. So you have you're cooking and you're loving what you're doing. You're genuinely loving what you're doing. So when somebody's when you're doing what you like to do, and then somebody's in your ear is telling you about the industry that you love, it just puts you in a good mood. And being in a good mood in a kitchen is very important. Despite all the hours and gallons of coffee, being in a good mood is essential.
I think it significantly improves the outcome on the plate. Like being in a good mood. And there's, I mean, some people might even take it a little bit further, where they say, if you're in, like, everybody who's experienced grandma's meal, it's almost like the love is right there on the plate. It's like, it might be the most simple meal, but there is nothing like grandma's meal.
Yeah, well, that's it. I've listened to a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I think that was an interview with Sat Baines, who's is one of the great chefs in the UK. And one thing that really got me, that he said that usually when you go to a restaurant, there's always one ingredient that there's missing on the plate, and it's love. Because there's difference between, let's say you're cooking at home for your family, for your friends, whatever, and you want to make sure that every single pepper is sliced the correct way, and you do put this little extra effort into it to make sure that they enjoy the food. And when you're working in a restaurant, a lot of chefs forget about this, and for them it's very much a job, and it's a way to put food on the table for them. But they forget that it's about genuinely loving what you do. And as he said on the podcast, is you need to be jealous that the food that you're plating, somebody's going to eat it in 5 minutes. You need to be jealous of the fact that somebody will eat the food. And there's so much wisdom in it. And every time I've listened to that phrase of him saying it, I had I've got goosebumps now. And it's just, as he said, it's about genuinely loving what you do and having the passion for it.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it actually hard to eat out. Like you mentioned, how corporate structure hotels are, and I was at the estate management conference here last month in St. Petersburg, and it was at the Marriott property, and the food was so sad. It was so incredibly sad. Like, you pay nearly $20 for a sandwich, and it's like this cold bread out of, and like canned
tuna, they've been made hours in advance.
Yeah, and I'm like, how can this be so sad? Like, I mean, there's so much attention to how the interactions are with the stuff. Like, it's perfect. Everybody acknowledges you as a human being. Everybody is like giving you that the feeling of being seen and being the guest and all of that. But then you get these very sad products where there's like clearly no love. And as you said, there have been like the meeting about the meeting and how to cut the food cost and how to make this an efficient process. But by the time it gets out, you're like, just like, why do you serve such sad food?
Well, yeah, that's another difference between private chefing and and restaurants and stuff. I'm not saying all of the restaurants, because there's many restaurants that food cost is probably the least of their worries, and what they want to do is make a very personal experience for the guest. But usually they're super expensive restaurants that not everyone can afford to go, as opposed to going for a brunch to this local hotel that's in your town, whatever. But yeah, I think the Excel sheets killed the romance of food, which is quite sad, because the little love ingredient is gone, because even if you can have the most passion that you can being a chef in a restaurant, but when you will go to that meeting with the general manager or with the executive chef, and it'll be like, okay, we have this, we have this much budget for it, make it happen. Food isn't getting any cheaper. Usually hotels order from massive suppliers. It's very rare that they'll get artisanal cheese from this local cheese shop, or they'll get this beautiful beef from the local butchers, etc., etc. And then you get the private chefing bits that every morning you're choosing your own ingredient. Yes, not all the time you will have the luxury to do this, and you will have to maybe order it in from a bigger supplier. But budgeting is very rarely an issue as well, because let's be honest, not everyone can afford to hire a private chef. It is quite a spenny business. So in your budget, the quality of the food is there. And when you do have good produce, you really rarely have to do a lot to it. If you have good produce, you just, let's say you've got a great steak, you don't have to sous vide it for 10 hours and, flavor it and marinate it and everything. You have a good steak, you do a slice of it, you grill it beautifully, you let it rest, give it a little sauce, and it's a beautiful steak. That's it. And that makes it so simple. And that's the factor of love coming in as well. Because let's be honest, if you get a beautiful, strip loin of beef and you put it on your board, 9 out of 10 you're going to take a picture of it and be like, look at this, guys, I've got this amazing beef, and post it on Instagram because you love what you see. And then you get this boring bit of beef that's been, vacuum packed, and it's been on the shop shelf for, the past 10 days. There's no love in there, is there? And that's very much how hotels run. In my opinion, hotels teach you how to push and teach you how to push yourself to the limit. And, as I said, I've been hotel trained, and this is probably some of the best training I ever had in my life. And it was probably the funnest times and the hardest times at the same time. But I probably would never, ever come back to cook in a hotel again. I mean, then again, never say never, but I wouldn't want to. I put it this way.
Yeah. Actually, and the love, kind of, since you touched up in the supply chain, the love starts in the soil. Because a farmer that is deeply caring about the land he has, he will have a completely different level of organic content, which will lead to a completely different outcome in the carrot itself. And there's this one thing I always remember. I was dining at the Blue Hill Farm just outside of New York from Dan Barber.
I've heard of it. It's my dream. It's my dream to go there.
I've been there 3 times. It's hands down my favorite restaurant in the world that I've eaten at yet. And they were choosing organic carrots from like Whole Foods. It's like a big supermarket chain here, but known for organic stuff too. And then they were choosing their own carrots, and they were kind of, the organic sugar content was like on a magnitude different, and what they're trying to show is that, organic doesn't really mean anything other. It can still be a large monoculture. The land isn't cared for necessarily. That there is so much more to growing quality food that nourishes the soil as well as the people. And he wrote a book, actually behind me, back down here, where he speaks about, if you truly care for food, you need to care for the soil and the farmer, because you need to cook something that allows them to care for the soil first. And that our food system right now is kind of like on demand. It's like, okay, we want tomatoes. This land has to yield tomatoes. But what the land really needs is different rotations. And it cannot be monoculture all the time. And it has to be worked in different ways and used in different ways to be nourished well and have a substantial amount of organic content in it. And that, as a chef, basically, he sees his responsibility in cooking what makes the land the most fertile land. And that's rotational, and that there's a lot of things in there that people don't necessarily like to eat. So he sees his mission in, how do you celebrate those in such a way that people are happy to eat them? And that's how he sees his role as chef. And there's like so much love in there, because it goes all the way from the experience of eating to what it takes to grow it and how to support the farmers growing it, How does the farmer make a living wage out of it? How does the soil have this rich organic content? And how does it still stay true and translate into the experience of eating at his restaurants?
Well, yeah, that's it. That's very much what being a chef has come to, and it really much done a full circle, hasn't it? Of being the whole society being industrialized to being able to go to a supermarket middle of the winter and get yourself a packet of strawberries, to chefs actually appreciating the fact that here, maybe that strawberry is not really that good, and they'll search for, they'll give themselves the kind of the mission of searching for the right product, and that has become a huge part of chefing. Not only cooking this tomato, this cabbage, whatever, but making sure that you giving yourself a lot of time, and you are on the mission to hunt down the best suppliers in your area and make sure that you speak to them. You nurture that friendship of, okay, maybe next week I would like on my menu X, Y, and Z, and then the farmer will be like, okay, cool, I can grow it for you, or I've got it already, or maybe that's not the right idea because it's not the season. It's all about communication, and yeah, very much. What I've noticed as well, that which is very sad, that cooking and eating healthy food these days has become a luxury, and it is more expensive than eating not so healthy food, because you'll still go to a supermarket and you'll get yourself a duck breast or a chicken breast, like very very simple food, and then you have maybe the bio eco ones or whatever with probably twice as much price tag on it, and it's better, but at the same time it's twice as much, and that's the kind of choices that an average human being has to choose from, that eating healthy and eating seasonally did become a luxury, which is quite sad. But as I said, for us as private chefs, luckily that problem is gone, because we want to supply the best for our guests and customers, I suppose.
I must admit, even on a personal level, sometimes I like, for example, blueberries. I know all the benefits of eating blueberries. I know all the downside of eating non-organic blueberries. But if I see the package being literally twice the price, I like have to consciously remind myself why I'm paying for that. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know this is better because of all of the secondary plant components like polyphenols and things inside that are actually only there present if it wasn't drenched in pesticides. So, and I also know that those pesticides have all kinds of downstream consequences for my health. But I actually have to remind myself of that a lot when I see the price. And it's kind of funny how we're tuned like that.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had the answer to that, but I think we just have to live with it, I suppose. But I've not noticed this until probably, I started, getting into chefing and getting into sourcing the best produce and making sure that it's seasonal, it's fresh, and it's local. Because, as I told you before, I do come from a super, super tiny village in southeastern Poland. It's between the city of Rzeszów and Przemyśl. It's maybe 100 people living there at the moment. Super, super tiny. I'm from a little farm, and at some point in my life, when I was a kid, I'd moved into the UK, and I was always embarrassed about, as a kid, I was super embarrassed about coming from a farm, coming from a village, and as a kid, we very much, like with my family, we had to help granddad, help him on the field, or help him with the livestock or whatever. And or I remember maybe like once or twice a year, granddad would maybe slaughter a pig, and that would be a big thing, and I was very much embarrassed about it all, until I actually started getting more and more and more into the industry. And then I realized literally everything that I had in my childhood, that was something that all chefs of maybe kind of high end level strive, is to have the opportunity to break down a whole pig and break it down into bits, and have the opportunity to go to a field and pick up a potato, pick up a blueberry, pick up a pumpkin, whatever. This is what people pay ridiculous money for now. And this is something that I was super embarrassed about for years. So I very much started coming back to it. And whenever I have a chance, I will go back home every now and then. And kind of, I still have a lot of family there and on the little farm. So, it's always a huge experience for me to go there and pick up this pumpkin. It's, and you smell it and it smells of pumpkin, not pesticides. So yeah, produce it's a massive thing for me in my cooking, which this is something that I put a lot of effort into getting it right.
One of my best mentors in the kitchen, Gerd Schweiger in Spain, actually, he told me that the best chef is the best produce, and it's not even about the chef. So I remember him, and we were standing receiving an order of tomatoes, and it was like this. It was almost like a tomato nerd who was delivering those tomatoes to us. Like all he was caring about, he traveled the world getting seeds for tomatoes, and just like receiving the product from him. I remember my head chef, he was so excited because he knew how much went into these tomatoes from that guy already, and he knew we were truly sourcing some of the best tomatoes we could source on the island, and they were just like amazing. You don't need a whole lot to add to that tomato. I mean, a drizzle of an amazing olive oil and some sea salt, and you're done. No?
Yeah, that's it. And it's that's very much what the Marco Pure White podcast that I listened to said. That's literally what he said, that accept Mother Nature as a true artist. And that's just one simple rule that, is going to save you in many, many troubles. If you're sitting there writing down a menu and you're thinking like, oh my God, what I'm going to do, just look into the calendar and then go in the markets, pick up the freshest stuff that you can get, and the menu is pretty much writing itself. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah. It's maybe more so that given that chefs are being more used to not being tied to seasonality, that they've evolved around not cooking seasonally, and they don't actually have the skill set to execute every season well.
Yeah, it's quite hard to do this. I get your point, because then again, that comes down to the massive corporate hotels that they have maybe a client or a guest that will have a massive function, and middle of the winter they're going to want the strawberries that I was talking about, and the hotel will order them, and then you'll have 10 young chefs who will prep the strawberries, and they're going to be like, oh my God, these strawberries are amazing, because probably the hotel paid a lot of money for them to still get them good quality. But yeah, that's the thing, that you do work with some good produce, but not seasonally. And yeah, it's very hard to build something on this, because you do need to have a strong foundation to evolve, obviously. And and if you've been stuck in a place for 4, 5, maybe 6 years prepping food that's not seasonal and building menus around this, yes, you will probably cook some good food with it, no doubt in that, but it's not going to be seasonal, because you don't really know when the veg grows. That's something that I was very guilty of, but it kind of got to me that maybe it's time to learn. So I started reading a lot about it. I started asking my family about it. And then I was very much fortunate to work in a couple of places that brewed their own vegetables, or had little garden. We even had a forager in one of the places we worked in. It was pretty cool. You could literally order wild garlic and she would go and forage for you. So it was brilliant. And that's how you learn about seasonality. But it will take time, and it does require a lot of time and effort. And yeah, that's when you kind of become independent, when you get the knowledge about the stuff that necessarily does not seem that obvious, but in real life it will save you in a lot of situations.
And I think that's also where you become very valuable in the private chef world, because see, if you go into a conversation with a client, and for example, you mention that you're able to forage, and you might happen to be there in mushroom season, and you're like, hey, maybe I can take a stroll in my break, and I can see if I can find some chanterelles or porcinis. Or there's another foraging chef that I interviewed before, and he's like, people fly him all around the world, and he's trying to pick places where he can forage in that season.
Yeah.
And that's like such a unique skill set. Like even within private chefs, that's like 1% of the chefs.
Yeah, it is. It's quite risky. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes you do have a bit of doubt in yourself. But I've got a rule. I don't forage something that I'm not sure of, or something that I've never
I think
tasted.
that's a golden rule, especially when it comes to
Um,
mushrooms.
Yeah,
If I'm
exactly.
not
I mean,
100% sure, I'm not eating.
there's a funny joke going around the industry. I don't know if you got it in the States, but one of the chefs told me that all mushrooms are edible, but some of them are only edible only once. And that's that's the that's the thing that not all of the mushrooms are edible, and you do need to be certain about them, especially with mushrooms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find it quite natural foraging because even though I've only spent a kind of fraction of my childhood on the farm and in the village and on the countryside, we still kind of came back for the kind of duration of the whole summer holidays. Myself and my cousins, we would go around the village or go around the forest and stuff. We would pick anything from wild strawberries to wild sorrel to there was loads of like wild apple trees and cherry trees, and it'll just make you curious about the world. And I think it's all about the curiosity that if you're not sure at this point, we've got all the knowledge in the world in your pocket, and it's it's your iPhone, it's your smartphone, whatever. And if you're not sure, just Google it, and 9 out of 10, it'll tell you all about it. You've got Google Lens, another great source of knowledge, and that's how you learn about it. But you do need to put a bit of time and effort to learn about it, which I am learning about it on a daily basis. I read a lot about it, and yeah, I try to use as much of the natural food as you mentioned before through fermenting and pickling and drying and curing and all this kind of stuff. I very much cook no waste, or I try to. So when I've got beef trimmings, I'll cure them and then I'll dehydrate them into pretty much a rock kind of consistency. But then you can microplane them and it'll give you the most umami flavor you can ever imagine. Or wild garlic, which is very much in season in Europe now. You'll have anything from the leaves to the flowers, and then after the flowers you'll get the little buds that you can turn them into caper berries, which is a very cool thing. Another thing that I forage, and it's even in my logo as part of my business, is pine cones, which are quite a surprise for a lot of my guests and a lot of my clients. That you can actually make pine cones edible if you forage them early enough, and you usually pick them when they're nice and green. You start off just like you would make with maybe Korean chawing kind of thing. So you do kind of cure them in sugar, previously cleaning them, obviously, and let the juices kind of, get out, and then you reduce it into a caramel consistency and put it back in. And it turns the pine cone almost into a Haribo jelly consistency, if you will. And it's very much like eating a Christmas tree. It's a one-off experience. I believe it originates from the kind of Georgia, Ukraine, Russia region. And yeah, I think that's another thing. That's what my cooking is very much about. I do enjoy going back to the roots and reading and asking a lot of my, ancestors about the Slavic cooking, because it's very different to the kind of Western cuisines of, you'll have the French cuisine, you'll have, Mediterranean and stuff, but nobody really speaks about, the Eastern European part of it. And I remember, it's very simple stuff that my granny used to cook on the farm. It would always be like baby potatoes with like reduced right down sour cream and dill, and it was some of the best summer dishes we ever had. It was delicious. And with me being a massive history freak as well, I'll read into the kind of old school recipes of kind of Eastern Europe and want to refine them in a way that they become more interesting and they nearly get a second life out of it. So, my granny's not with us anymore, but still very much what she cooked, I pretty much put the same thing on the plate. It's just a little bit more refined, or it's got a different ingredient to it. But it's also got that story to it that, a lot of people are very much interested in. And as I said before, that, you're an entertainer as much as you are a chef. And, when your guests hear a story about, the pine cone, they were like, oh, so there's more to it. It's not just the flavor, it's not just the smell, it's another sense of eating. So yeah, it's the whole experience.
Where do you feel like the experience is pushing the boundaries of what Western people will enjoy? Because some of the things I think in the Eastern cuisine are not as palatable, and I think that the Western cuisine, not everybody is as adventurous. Where do you think that sometimes you've pushed the line a little bit?
Yeah, it does happen. I wouldn't say a lot, but it does happen. And I respect this. If if a client says, I'm not really a fan of X, Y, and Z, I'm more than happy to cook a little bit of French cuisine or a little bit of British cuisine or Mediterranean. I'm part of being a chef, and we are in the service industry. You serve to people what people want. What I tend to do is speak to my guests before kind of serving any food. Let's say that for example, in the Alps I have guests that come to the chalets weekly, so they would come on a Sunday and leave on a Sunday. And yeah, I'll speak to them. I'd be like, hi guys, this is what I'm planning to do. Would you be willing to have an experience of totally different flavors that you probably never ever have tasted before, and you probably very rarely will taste them again? Or would you like a bit more of a chill classic menu? And it's usually 50-50 on people who do want to experience, which is absolutely fine. What I find about, because you mentioned the kind of Western palate, and cooking is all about fashion and trends. And let's be honest, 10 years ago, it was all about molecular cuisine with anyone from, El Bulli to the Fat Duck and, look at something that's not something but tastes like something and, all this kind of stuff. And I very much feel like today's high-end cooking is all about the kind of, the Nordic style of, nice clean plates with a lot of sharp flavors on them. And that's very much what Slavic cuisine is. And that's what I believe. And it's funny how I did move to the UK when I was a kid, and my parents would very much feed me and my brother still Polish food. So, for example, like the first time I've tried, a Heinz baked bean, it was when I was like at a sleepovers party at my mate's. I was like, "Is that what you eat? For dinner?" Like when I wanted to buy baked beans in the shop, my mum would always say, "No, we've got food at home." And then I've realized that nowadays people eat what they called weird 10 years ago. For example, my dad would, give his, Scottish friend a fermented gherkin, or he would give him a bit of sauerkraut, which is probably very popular in Germany as well. Or in France where I am, people love sauerkraut, choucroute, very, very, very traditional. And they're all saying, oh, this is disgusting, And then 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years has passed, and you'll go into the restaurants, probably some of the best and the finest restaurants in the world, and you'll find 90% of your little garnishes, whatever, are fermented or they're pickled, or yeah, you need to be adventurous. And I strongly believe that if you're not eating in the comfort of your own house, as in like, yeah, if you're going out to eat or you're going for a holiday and you spend a week with a private chef and have the luxury to have a private chef, you should make an experience. And that's very much what I encourage people to do. But as you said, you can't always, you can't make people to do this. So I'm more than happy to cook, more westernized cuisine for them. But I would strongly encourage people to definitely try this. And yeah, I think that should answer the question. Sorry for taking so long.
No worries. Actually, we can take a little look at some of the things so people get an idea what your cuisine looks like. And I already pulled up your Instagram earlier. And I mean, your Instagram in itself is kind of hard.
That's very nice of you to say. A lot of it, as I said, is my fiance's work. A lot of the pictures, but a lot of it is my good friend's work and his fiance's. What they do, they run a little marketing business for
is that him
restaurants
here
and stuff.
With the camera?
Yes, so that's Jacob with the camera.
Yeah,
he's got a business called Tasty Frames, where he kind of helps chefs and restaurants to build their marketing. It was quite fortunate that he came over to visit me in the Alps last year, and he brought his camera and the lights and stuff. So we've done a little kind of promo shoot and stuff. But at the same time, a lot of the pictures are done by my fiance. Very rarely I will take pictures. I'm getting better at them, but I'm still not there. I'm more on the cooking side.
It's something that I really, really try to encourage chefs to pick up on is realizing how much this sells you as a chef. Like pictures are top of the list. Even if you speak to agencies, like Anybody looking at your Instagram channel can tell the deep love and passion you have for food. There's so many different scenarios here where you're foraging, where you're harvesting, where you're following your curiosity, for example, with the bees here. And then there's you engaging with the food, preparing the food, showing the ready-made food. It just tells the whole story. And I think chefs, if they're able to display themselves in this way, it just carries the story. And at the end of the day, being a private chef, so much of it is storytelling. It's like you want people to fall in love with the story as much as with the food, because it's what will carry you through your career.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly believe that one, obviously being super genuine about what you do and actually, doing what you do is part of you. And yeah, telling a story by, plating the food and, picking it up to look nice, but also, the flavors and stuff. This does tell you a story of, your past, of, how you came onto being, the chef that you are and how you develop your style. And that's the whole story. And then again, that's another Marco Pierre White quote of, he said that, a recipe can confuse you, but a story can inspire you. And that's very much what I'd like to do. Is I'm not sure if I'm in the position to do that yet, or if I'll ever be, but I'd like to inspire as many maybe young chefs or the kind of starting chefs as possible, because it is a beautiful industry despite all the hours and the sweat and tears that comes into coming to a certain level of doing it. It is a beautiful industry, and if you truly love it, it's a beautiful career, and it's a beautiful place to be in. And you meet amazing people. You're traveling. It's very much a lifestyle, not only a job. And this is something that should be known by the kind of people that do start in the industry, that it is a lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's true. And the more chefs I speak to, I think the ones that embrace it as such are the ones that thrive and genuinely enjoy the journey the most. Like, if you see, you can make the private chef world a job, but I think it's actually harder, and it's less joyful. I think the way you were describing your personal journey sounds very in sync.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, and I think it comes from maybe the younger generations. And I don't want to feel, I don't want to make it, like I'm attacking anyone or I'm doing assumptions. That's just my honest opinion. That the younger generations of chefs maybe don't want to work as hard as it takes. And as I said before, food at a certain level, and I mean the whole industry itself, but I can only speak from the kind of back of house, cooking part. That food at a certain level requires a lot of discipline, and it requires a lot of time and effort and love. And and if you don't have them factors, it's just going to be food. And you're not maybe going to be as interesting for a potential client. You're maybe not going to be as genuine about it. Yes, you will cook a nice plate of food, and it's probably going to taste good, but it will taste like, then again, this factor of love, because it's not always nice and fluffy. You will get days when you're tired. You will get days when you wake up and the last thing you want to do is go and cook. And 9 out of 10, you won't have time to eat yourself because you're cooking, which is quite funny. But it's just, yeah, if you're loving the industry, you'll kind of put a blind eye on it and hope for the better days. And I can say for myself that probably the first maybe 7-8 years of me being in the cooking industry, not necessarily private sector, but cooking in general, it was some of the hardest years of my life. Anything from being shouted at on a daily basis to abuse in some of the high end kitchens that you get. It was not pleasurable at all, but you kind of know that there's a price to pay for the life that's to come. And if you really want to have that sort of life, and if you want to travel, you want to see places, and you want to make fairly good money these days, being a private chef, it does take several years of practice and keeping your head down and saying yes chef. And yeah, it will come with time, but nothing happens overnight.
Yeah, I actually think that this is something that has been lost in the last decade of also social media, I think. I think that there's a younger generation growing into not only our industry, but into the world that thinks everything comes overnight like their Amazon order, or everything comes over on demand like their food order, and that life should just instantly be giving to them and immediately yield massive results because that's what they've seen on social media, how some guy turned whatever his savings into a fortune with some coin
with
or
crypto.
something, yeah, that's exactly what and I feel like it just there was this massive mind shift from I think any good career, and it almost doesn't matter what it is, takes a good 5-7 years to kick it off well and get the experience under your belt. Like, or even if you're an athlete, you need to get that experience in that training in. It's the same in
That's
cooking.
even
It's the same in,
earlier than being an adult.
yeah.
9 out of 10.
And then you just need to put in the work to be able to have the potential to get the results. That doesn't even mean you will get the result. Like, I think right now people look at the world as something that should just by default yield them their dream. And I think people forget that in that equation there's still journey itself and the promise. The American Constitution has the pursuit of happiness. It's the pursuit. It's not a given. It's not.
Yeah,
It's
well,
not.
that's it. It's not a gift.
Yeah.
Nothing's for granted.
Exactly. And I think that's where things are getting a bit messed up, where everybody thinks it's the. I think the level of entitlement has grown.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it, and that's why I said about the kind of the best and the worst years of my training, because I never had any sort of culinary school, any culinary experience before I started chefing. I very much wanted to be a history teacher, and I just couldn't afford uni. I knocked around restaurant doors, and I wanted anything, any job, and nobody really wanted to give me a chance until I kind of managed to get a job as a kitchen porter in Glen Eagles Hotel in Scotland, which at the time, I mean, it still is, and it's an amazing place, but at the time it was one of the most luxurious places you can work in Europe. It was, it's great. And after 2 months on the pot wash, I got given a set of chef whites by my first head chef, Graham Polly, who I'm, forever grateful to. And, chef, if you're watching it, thank you very much. That's changed my life. And, it kind of went from there. And, the discipline that I've seen there, it's something that I've never ever experienced in my life ever again, and having been shouted at a lot. I look at it now, and and I probably deserved it. I'm not going to lie. I very much deserved it, But yeah, the kind of discipline that was there, and the chefs that you worked with, you kind of wanted to be the best. And myself, I was probably ruled by fear, not necessarily from the managers, but by fear of if I fail, I'm going to have to go back and maybe live with my parents or all this sorts of stuff. So I very much wanted to succeed. So I was trying to mimic as many good chefs, pinpoint and mimic the best chefs that I've worked with, and anyone from Chef Paul Hart to very good South African chef that I worked with, Guy and Davy, and all the kind of guys that I've worked with that I've seen a lot of. Not maybe even cooking skills, which they all had because they were all great chefs, but managing skills and being able to absorb pressure and all this kind of stuff. And then you're trying to mimic them on your journey going up, and yeah, and then again, as I said, all the characters in that kitchen, and I remember all the smells of this, the chemicals that you clean the kitchen with and stuff. That all kind of brings a lot of nostalgia. And as I said, that was some of the toughest times I went through, but it was some of the funnest times, and the best memories I'll have, in my career, because that's something that's giving you the chance to evolve into something, and come up with your own style and come up with maybe one day opening my own restaurant, which is my huge dream. But if not for that discipline and that and the chances I got given, I probably wouldn't be sitting where I am just now. So it all kind of has sense, and I didn't really see the sense of it back in the day. For me, it was just maybe at least 50% of it was only a job, but the other 50% was like, right, Phil, you really need to push. You really need to make sure that You're not going to go back and sleep on dad's couch. you're gonna push, and that's what kind of gets you through. And I think the biggest advice you could do, that's the advice that I got given, is keep your head down, say yes, chef, and and it will happen sooner or later. And when you feel confident enough to stand on both of your legs and saying, okay, I can do this, do it. You're not going to be the best. I remember my first private chef gig that I got offered, and the guy that I had a conversation with over, I think it was Skype or whatever, and he said, "Oh, do you fancy a head chef job in the Alps?" So I was like, "Oh my god, head chef at 24, unreal." I've landed in Geneva Airport, went to Chamonix, and I realized I was the only chef. That's why I was the head chef, and that's how I got into private chefing in the first place. And it was very much fake it till you make it. I'm not gonna lie. I've never ever had any sort of pastry experience. My desserts looked awful, and if I had if I seen myself now, I'd probably sack myself. I'd fire myself on the spot, because some of the desserts I've done, it was awful. Then that was another thing that kind of propelled me to go further, and I started watching loads of. I very much learned pastry of YouTube videos, because I knew if I'm gonna keep on doing that, they're gonna fire me. Like that's the end of story. So at some point, you're very much, throughout your whole career, you are ruled by a factor of fear, I would say. I don't know if it's the fear of getting sacked, or maybe not satisfying your guests or whatever, but that is the little bit of fear. I'm not saying you should be scared of going into your workplace every day, but that little factor of fear, that's something that's going to propel you every day and motivate you to do better and greater things, I suppose.
What you just mentioned about the fear, and there's like this sliver of anxiety that I've spoken to a lot of chefs about this, and there's a larger group of us where I'm glad people are open about it, because it's even like diehard 15-year, 20-year experienced chefs, they still have that. And the interesting thing is, in our own head, we always think like we're the one who has that and other people don't have it, and they're just so stellar and they pull it off. But the reality is, like 99% of the chefs that I spoke to, they have that performance anxiety almost. You can do what you can do, but there's always the chance of not delivering, or the client not being happy. And I think at the end of the day, we're all kind of suckers. We want them to be happy, and we want that appreciation at the end, because we also know how much work went into it.
Exactly. Like, we all know how much work goes into it. And, for me, it's very important when I mentioned about, being genuine about what you do. It's very important, because 8 out of 10, my clients will hunt me down on Instagram, and they'll look at the Instagram page and be like, "Oh my God, this pictures look nice. I'd like to have this." And you want to make sure that food that they get in front of them, it is going to be Instagram worth. And you're going to spend hours and hours and hours in the kitchen, even though you probably shouldn't have to, and you could easily pull it off in half of the time. But you want to make sure that this part of perfection is there, because the factor of fear is at the back of your head, and that anxiety that you spoke about is there. But you do want to satisfy people, and as you said, chefs are people pleasers, and I think you should. I think that the whole industry is about pleasing people and making people happy. This is what I mention a lot when I speak of the industry. It is about making people happy. So I am more than happy to spend and give a lot more time than I probably should to make sure that this is always up to the standard that will essentially leave a happy customer, because we are people pleasers and there's nothing we can do about it. And that's the essence of the industry.
Yeah. And then occasionally we run into the challenge of trying to please somebody who's unpleasable.
Well, yeah, that's it. It is a bit of a challenge sometimes, but it has to be done. It's just part of the job.
Yeah. So you did mention that with great gratitude, you had great people around you that help you with, for example, social media backend and stuff. What are some of the tasks that you feel are absolutely necessary for you to thrive as a chef, but something that you feel like you're actually happy that you were able to hand it over to someone else?
Well, I could probably handle the picture taking and the marketing myself, which I mainly do, because let's say all the captions on my Instagram are 100% written by me, and it's genuinely what I think about it. And, this is all my thoughts, there's nobody being hired about it and doing Instagram posts. I very much want it to be as organic as possible and as genuine as possible. But a huge factor of it is because I am running a business, I'm not employed by anyone, and kind of freelancing. The fact of having my fiance running the kind of the business side of it is a huge amount of it's a huge amount of help, and it's something that I do not have to worry about as much, because I know that at the end of the month she'll be like, oh well, let's send the invoices to the clients, or we need to speak to the accountants, or all this kind of stuff. I'll be honest, I'm very bad at it, and if I had to do it myself, I probably could pull it off, but I would keep me out the kitchen, which I really don't want it to happen. So yeah, definitely giving this kind of responsibility to my fiance is something that I'm really happy about. But yeah, marketing wise, I think the reason why I actually decided to do a lot of kind of short videos on Instagram and stuff, it's very much because I work on a friendly kind of environment. So I have a group of very close friends that I've known for over 2 decades now, and they're all very much have their own skill sets, and the way we work together is we want to cooperate in a way that if Jacob, the guy on the photos that you've seen, is running a business of marketing and e-commerce and stuff like this, I want him to be a part of my business, and I want to be a part of his business, and support each other. And as small businessmen, I think we should, and I'm very happy for him to to succeed. And I think that a lot of his kind of food content started from us doing a very, very first video of cooking. I remember it was quite funny because we've done it when I was quarantined during Corona, and I really could not go to the shop to get like the ingredients. So we just kind of opened the big chest freezer in his house, and I picked up, I think it was carp fish and something else. It was one of the ugliest dishes I cooked in my life. But that's how we both started, and that kind of gives you the journey of doing a little small video, and it maybe wasn't the best, and it maybe wasn't the best lighting, and it wasn't the best dish, but that's how you start. And it kind of, as you said, it tells a story. And I feel like if somebody's specializing in something, just leave it for the professionals. I'm not a professional photographer, I'm not a professional video maker, I'm not a professional marketing specialist. I'm a professional chef, and I want to make sure that the food on the pictures or on the on the video is up to the standard, and it's the same as I would serve to the guest. And I'll leave the technical sides of it to the people that I specialize with. And I've got all the trust to both Jacob, who's my really great friend, and to my fiance, who's also my really great friend.
Nice. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that aspect because it can get overwhelming because we think we need to do it all ourselves, but there are resources out there, and some might be in our immediate network, like for you, your friend, your fiance, and others might be professionally available, and actually like there's freelancing individuals out there who can help us, and it's oftentimes worthwhile to invest in professionals to make our work look as good as it should in the domain. Because at the end of the day, it's what allows us to get more business, and get more clients and serve more people, and that's what we want, because it enables us to cook.
Of course, I mean, it's a bit like a dominoes effect. As I said, if I'm a professional chef and I will hire a professional photographer to do professional pictures of it, and I'll post them on Instagram, and then my clients or my guests will hire me for exactly the same reasons, because my marketing is done professionally, my cooking is professional. So therefore, they want a professional chef to cook for them, and in that way, they're being professional about it, because they've done their background checks, they've done their research, and it's all about professionalism. And I feel like in that level of gastronomy, professionalism is one of the biggest keys that you should kind of look into. Because if you're not professional, and if you don't act professional, 9 out of 10 people won't hire you again. And probably if you get rehired, you'll get to know your clients more and more and more and more, and the kind of relationship between yous will be, more organic and a bit more, chill and relaxed. But there's always this little level of professionalism, and then again that fear factor. It's all there, and yeah, it is a business after all. And yes, it's of course it's about numbers. Of course, it's about money. We all do this to make money, but you also need to have fun. So for me, that little marketing shoot, it was a lot of fun. It was some of and it didn't even take that long. It was probably about 2 days worth of shooting and pictures and stuff. But it was so much fun. And yeah, again, you never know when you're going to use experience and the knowledge you got from it. Maybe in the next 10, 15 years, you'll have to do something like this again, and you already know the fact that because it's not as easy as just hiring a photographer or a video maker and okay, we'll just do a video. You do need to sit down and you need to explain to him what you want in the video, what you're going to cook, what you're going to like, how you're going to cut stuff, how you're going to prep stuff.
Yeah.
During the kind of all mise en place that I've done in the videos, Jacob and I sat down and we wrote a whole scenario of okay, so at this minute I'm going to be smoking trout because it's going to have maybe a nice effect of the smoke in the video and stuff. So it's not easy, but that's another set of skills that you're putting in your arsenal that you never know you're going to have to pull it out in future, which is a great thing. Always gather the most intel you can possibly get, because I very much think that knowledge is power at the end of the day, and the more knowledge you've got, the life becomes easier.
And it's really that skill set stacking that allows you to do more high valuable execution. And then within those different skill sets, you choose what is the most fun for you at the right, and gets you kind of the future experiences and income that you want.
Well, yeah, of course, the more professional it looks, let's be honest, you're going to get, maybe better, wealthier clients, whatever, and it's going to bring you a bit more money, but it's also going to bring you a bit more publicity. If probably not for that, we wouldn't be sitting here just now and having a chat. And I feel that social media nowadays is a great tool.
Yeah, 100%. I found you through
and use it. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. We wouldn't be sitting here and and having a chat. So it's a great tool if you use it, but not abuse it. Because what I also found that there's many people that strive and follow the path to be super famous, and all they want is the publicity and stuff. And I feel like I was very much guilty of it. Maybe more last year than this year. This year I did actually focus on making sure that my food is up to standard and it's good. And I'm not going to lie, I've not posted a lot this, especially this winter. But that's only because I'm working on various projects, not only about cooking. There's a lot of more projects that I'm working on, which I can't really share right now. I wish I could, but there's definitely some exciting stuff coming up. But that's obviously taking my time off the Instagram. And then again, that just proves the point that it is all me, because, most of it is me. And it is me who's posting it all. But yeah, there's a lot of chefs who abuse it to a way that they spend more time on their phone than they would in the kitchen, and it's quite sad because at the end of the day, it is food that should be the most important thing. And then if you do have time to take pictures, by all means take pictures. It's gonna bring you nothing but good. But yeah, food is the number one thing that should be important to a chef.
I agree. There have been many times when I was so busy caring for the food that I forgot to take the pictures.
That's another thing, yeah. And it's usually the most beautiful dish that you've ever done, or the lighting's not there, and yeah, but it happens. And then you think, okay, I'll do it next time, and that's it. There's not much you can do. That's the thing about I don't know if it ever happened to you, but when you put the plates on the table, there's always going to be comments from, the guests going, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Should I eat it, or should I, take a picture of it, or I don't want to destroy it. But at the end of the day, it is food. I know very much it does look like a little work of art, and you do want to just frame it and put it on the wall, but it is food, but it is art that just disappears in seconds, and it's just gone like this, and it's really hard to recreate this unless you're obviously you work in a restaurant and you've got the consistency of serving the same menu, which private chefs really rarely do. It's usually, that's what I also say to my clients, that you guys are having this dish and I'm probably going to make it another maybe 3 or 4 times. This is it. Nobody else will have this dish ever again, because you evolve, because you have different produce, you're in a different part of the world, and it just doesn't make sense. It's a bit like Snapchat. There's only 10 seconds and then it's gone forever.
Exactly. You just have to be there, fully present, and there's no way of actually capturing it beyond that. You just have to
that's
experience it.
That's why it's all about memories, and you should do everything to memorize, or you should do everything for the guests so they can memorize the food, which is very much what the pinecone I was speaking about is. Because let's say I'm going to have a group of guests for a whole week in a beautiful chalet in the French Alps, and every day they're going to have at least a 3-course menu with a starter, main course, dessert, probably a cheese board, and little canapes, and they're going to enjoy it. It's going to be tasty, it's going to be lovely food, but 9 out of 10 they won't remember anything of this because there was so much of it. But if you give them something unique and something that small, like a pinecone, they're gonna be sitting in their beautiful house, in Mallorca or in Sweden or whatever, in the next 6 months, and they're gonna be like, oh, here, remember that that pinecone that we had last year or 6 months ago? That was something, and it's all about creating the memories, and that's how people will remember you. And coming up with something that's very unique and very you, I suppose, is I think it's the key to actually have guests thinking of you and coming back to you with their memories, or rebooking you.
I love it. Well, Filip, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Where can people connect with you, find out more about you?
Mainly probably still through my Instagram. I've started doing a little bit of TikTok, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really a massive TikTok person myself, and then again it takes time. So maybe Instagram, probably the best, at FlipFlop Foods. And yeah, Gmail, it's all there. But yeah, mainly Instagram, I'd say it's the best kind of, that's where I always am. And I'll be more than happy to reply to any DMs and chat with you. So yeah, I think that's the social media I'm mainly present on.
Nice. And then with all your upcoming projects, maybe there's space for episode 2 in the future.
Hopefully, definitely. I'll be more than happy to be hosted by you again. It was a great pleasure to chat to you, and great pleasure to share my story.
Thank you for joining us at the Private Chef podcast. If you know any highly skilled chefs that want to take their life to the next level, make sure to share this podcast with them. And if you enjoyed this episode, click subscribe and check out our upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.